successful audit.
At 7 Mom FM 825 now on your station playing your hit music. It is Mom FM. Overcast skies right now. A check of your weather forecast coming up in just a little bit. But he's looking out on camera right there. Mitch Foster, City Manager of Ludington, in the studio with us, as well as Mayor Barnett here as well. Good morning, sir. Thanks for coming in this morning. Let's talk about some things that will be happening and talked about tonight at City Council. That happens at 6 p.m. at City Hall. We want to chat about this morning. Before we even do that, did you have a good weekend, Mayor Barnett?
I did.
Okay.
I did. The word of the day is auto repair. So
okay, I hear that. We from time to time we have issues with cars. You are driving the Mrs. car, right?
I am.
Okay.
We're trying out the rest of the fleet.
Okay, that's all right. Mitch, you could just recommend a bicycle to him.
Yeah, I could. And I'm going to need mine all this week. I drove to Wisconsin on Thursday or Wednesday night and drove back yesterday, so my back feels like I've been stabbed 100 times. So looking forward to biking.
Okay, there you go. Let's talk about some of the things that are on tap for tonight with the City Council. You've got the annual audit that takes place. What happens there?
So we get Ken Berthune from Berthune and Company that comes in and gives the presentation every year. And so as long as there's no findings with an audit, it's a good thing. We will see that the city spent about $350,000 more this year than what we brought in. That was planned based on some projects that we had. And we also had a single audit done based on spending more than $750,000 worth of federal funds. But overall, the audit kind of just gives you a grand perspective as to where the finances are.
All right, and that's part of the charter, I would assume, or that has to happen.
Yep.
And is there ever any stumbling, any hiccups that happen? I mean, you mentioned $350,000 over, right?
Yep.
That's a lot. But obviously you knew that this was was the trajectory that you were headed.
Yeah, I mean the only times that you ever have stumbling blocks, the auditors are fairly good, and Clerk Luskin is a certified public accountant by trade, so that helps us that we can get through this process very easily through her hard work. But there are also, just frankly, at the end of each year, there's a lot of work that is going into it about journal entries to move money from certain places where it wasn't spent into places where it was, or dollars that were allocated in certain areas that should have been allocated elsewhere. So as long as all that stuff is done between the auditor and Clerk Luskin, then typically the audit comes back fairly easy.
All right, and that happens. It starts tonight, or okay?
Yep. Nope. The full presentation is tonight, so the audit's been completed.
Okay.
We had the management letter that was reviewed a couple weeks ago, so that's good news. And then we move forward to the presentation to council and the public tonight.
Is there ever, in the last topic of the subject, do you get a chance to see the audit before it's presented?
Yep. So
Okay.
Clerk Luskin will get a full version of it. I'll get most of it as well to double check, make sure that we don't have any concerns with it. As well as in the management letter, that's typically where it lays out if there were any concerns or findings. And there weren't anything of crazy nature this year, as always.
Okay.
Yep.
If you're just joining us, we're talking with City Manager Mitch Foster this morning. Mayor Barnett, Mark Barnett, in the studio with us. And by the way, you can watch this on our Facebook page right now and our YouTube channel. Soon we'll be streaming on Twitter. That's coming up as well. So we're expanding that, and you'll be tweeting away, Mr. Mayor, in no time. Do you have a Twitter account, by the way, or not?
I do not.
Okay, we're going to have to set you up with it. But let's talk about the new public forum, the public comment started, I think, at the last meeting, right?
Actually, a couple meetings before that, but
Okay.
it was adopted. The rules, council rules for public comment, were formally adopted at the last meeting.
Okay, and feedback from the city council members in regards to that, the public in general, how did that go?
I think it's positive. Really, I mean, any organization, anybody that has meetings, has rules or guidelines or whatever to allow us to kind of go through the business of the meeting, and public comment is certainly one of them. I think it's hugely important, and frankly, I think it's important that when people rise and come and speak publicly, that the viewers, whether they're in the council chambers or online, I think it's important that they know where the speakers are coming from relative to, is it an opinion? Is it an opinion based on a relationship? Is it opinion, who's talking and what perspective do they represent? So that's the things that were dealt with in the formally adopted council rules for public comment, and we're moving on to other stuff.
All right. No pushback as of yet that you can share at all or not?
I'll let you know next time we meet.
All right, sounds good. Which is tonight, and then back in the studio next. And by the way, we've been talking about this, and Mitch, I think sounds like it might be a good idea to go on field trips when the two of you are part of Mom FM segment. We would go down to City Hall and do the segments from there. So love to be able to do that and get on the studio.
I think that'd be a blast to get us down there and doing the interview. And I think it'd be easy.
All right, let's plan on that. We were just talking about Consumers Energy. They're right outside the studio. Thanks, guys, for all that you do and checking out. They're like, hey, they're talking about it. Yeah, we are. We're talking about you guys right there. They looked back. It is Mitch Foster and Mark Barnett in the studio with us talking about the city of Ludington. This is a hot topic. It's not the first time it's come up. It's coming up again. Is parking fees potentially at Stearns Beach? Why and what's the history there?
So at least the files that I can find in my office, and the mayor probably knows even a little bit more than I do. Back in 2016, 2017, this idea was broached by staff and by council at that point in time. It kind of died on the vine. And I think at this point in time, we've had a couple of city councilors that have asked to have this be a discussion topic again, as they've seen the value that Muskegon and other neighboring communities have had to utilize revenues from that beach or paid parking area to put back into the parks and into the beach and into their playgrounds and the restroom facilities. And so the idea, at least for tonight, if council wants to talk about it and to consider it, then let's schedule a committee of the whole meeting. If not, then staff will stop doing work and we'll just kind of focus on everything else that we do. But that direction helps us, and then we can move forward with a conversation.
What direction do you think it will go in?
You never know on an issue, especially like this. I liken it very similar to any kind of controversial item because it's a big change. I know Muskegon, it took them quite a bit of time as well to go through this process. Anytime the state park makes changes on their fee schedules, same deal. So I can never tell with the city council most of the time, and so this is one of those items as well.
All right, let's dive more into this if you don't mind. Yeah. If this is adopted, what does that look like?
Well, again, that's going to depend on what the structure city council has. In general, I think from staff perspective, in our conversations with South Haven, Muskegon, Traverse City, as well as others that are on the east side, it's really been about how do we make it free for residents that live within the city of Ludington or have a city of Ludington address, and then how can we make it a little, not as expensive as a normal one, but a little bit less expensive for our neighboring communities, folks like PM Township, Hamlin Township, Amber Township, or others in Mason County. And then how do you change, again, a different rate for those that are visiting us just for the short-term periods so that everybody has a stake in the game? Because right now we have a free rider problem, which is the city of Ludington residents pay the entire share of the cost of the beach, but the beach itself is enjoyed by people from all over the world. And so how do we all share in the cost for that maintenance and upkeep of the beach?
With those conversations in regards to Traverse City, Muskegon, so and so forth, are they actually able to have a local pass versus so it changes as you go further out?
Yeah, Muskegon's got an interesting method where they actually sell so they will give out 2 passes if you sign up by mid-April. They'll give each home 2 passes. You can get an additional one, just kind of proof of residency, and you can get an additional one. But then all of their neighboring townships that directly border the city of Muskegon, they get almost like a pass given to the township, who can then sell it. But they can't sell it any cheaper than what the rate is that every other person gets it for. So they've got a very interesting setup that would be one to consider. But most people, they either do it with a sticker in the window that's a seasonal sticker, or they do it by a license plate reader where we get a technological system, a tech system that reads the license plate as a police officer or beach patrol goes through. Those that have season passes or are residents or might have a day pass get it whitelisted, and others kind of get it identified that they don't have a pass.
Mr. Mayor, what about cost of monitoring this, of ticketing, of all of that? Does that become a burden on the city?
Well, I think the first year was set up, and the tech that Mitch is talking about is going to be a cost, and it'll be something that'll theoretically be recouped based on the rate structure if it goes through. But the reality of it is you got beach patrol down there anyway, so that's a cost that doesn't have to be newly incurred. It's just a continuation. It's one of their tasks that they'll do, and it's my belief, from past experience and thinking about it now, that's a reasonable thing to ask them to do.
Mitch, what about cost? I mean, what's the cost look like to maintain these beaches?
So, to maintain the beaches themselves,
Yeah.
several $100,000. You look at the rebuild of a restroom, you're looking at $500,000. You're looking at the older playground equipment we have down there. New playgrounds are $100,000 plus. And those are things that we can't just afford easily because, every spring and every fall we have the opening and closure of the beach. We try to get that out there a couple times a week to try to comb the beach. Those expenses go quite quickly. And if you truly think about it, things have not gotten cheaper. And that includes labor as well as the expensive items and stuff. And without a way to somehow pay for that, all of those increased expenses are bore by the resident themselves and the taxpayer. And so part of the reason here, again, going back to that free rider problem, is trying to deal with that so that everybody pays for it, so that there's a sense of ownership when you go to the beach, instead of it being, well, someone else is paying for it. I don't have to worry about maintaining where I've been sitting or picking up my trash, because I have a stake in it as well.
Mm-hmm. Do you see, just as off the cuff question, do you see a lot of revenue coming from tickets, or most of the revenue coming from the visitor passes purchased?
I think the vast majority of the revenue, if this were to go into place, would be from the visitor passes. I mean, think about it when you go to a location, or any of us go to a vacation destination. We are just paying for parking because that's a reality. We're not talking $40 a day to park. We're talking $5, $10. At least that's what's been kind of estimated so far. That's less than what you're paying for a coffee sometimes, or 2 coffees if you're going out to Starbucks. And when you're on vacation, it doesn't matter. There are those concerns about it being pushed, parking being pushed in the neighborhoods, and those are all things that have to go into consideration by council. But again, tonight, let's just see if people want to move forward with a discussion on this or not. And then staff can either finalize kind of our research on this, or we can drop it and say, all right, understand, we will hold off on this for the time being.
All right, last question in regards to this subject is, if the council says, hey, let's move forward with this discussion,
Yep.
could you see it affecting the 2023 season?
Absolutely not. No. One of the reasons why we're having this discussion now is so that if council says, all right, let's have the discussion, we have a committee of the whole meeting, say in May, later in May sometime, and they say, yeah, let's bring this to council for consideration. We would then advertise and let folks know throughout the summer of 2023, fall of 2023, that in 2024, this will all go into place.
Okay. We have a question in regards to, is it just for parking? Can folks cruising the beach in their collector history cars still cruise through, is the question.
Well, and so that's all part of this conversation. I think part of what we've tried to do as a staff in our conversations with other communities, Joe Stickney and Kurt Kathamer from Public Works and Parks have really tried to have some really honest conversations. One of those is, hey, what about the timing? Timing of required passes. Does it end at 6? Does it end at 9? Does it start at 10? People driving through. I would say from staff perspective, if you're driving through, nobody's going to bother you. If you're coming after 7 p.m. and you just want to come for the sunset and you're coming for dinner, cool, let's figure out how to make that work. But again, council's got to finalize what that looks like, because that also just dictates what the revenues and the costs of a system would be too.
Well, and then people are going to be concerned about, are we nickel and diming,
Right.
especially the tourists that come in that are a good lifeblood of this area, right?
Yeah, and I think that's going to be a big part of this too. If council decides to move forward with the discussion, then inviting our friends at the CVB and other tourism-based entities to have the conversation so that everybody's on the same page as to how this could look and why and all those sorts of questions.
All right, we'll follow up in regards to that, see where that goes. Let's talk childhood cancer campaign. We've talked a lot about them recently here on air, online too. You've got the proposal is not the right word. What's up on the docket or the agenda for the night tonight?
The term is proclamation.
Okay, all right.
And yep.
And take us through that, Mr. Mayor.
Well, it's simply a statement, really, that acknowledges the problem that it is and the things that need to be done to help combat it. And there's I'm not sure how many years in the past, but there's been an effort to raise funds through the establishment of these lemonade stands throughout the city. And stop by, have a chat with the kids, the parents, drop in a donation, drive off with lemonade. And it seemed like a pretty simple, straightforward way of helping raise funds, and I think it's a great deal.
All right. Any issues there? Any stumbling blocks in regards to moving forward with the proposed lemonade stands that will be throughout the city at all?
I don't see any issues with it, really. I mean, the ones that I've seen in the past, it's generally always the parents are out there in close proximity to the kids operating the stand. It's a learning experience for them. It's an opportunity to understand how they can give back and help those less fortunate, those in need. I think those are really important life lessons. And I think parents have been great. The ones that I've seen have been great about being there and kind of shepherding their kids through the process.
All right. If you're just joining us, we're talking with Mayor Barnett here from the city of Ludington this morning here on Mom FM, as well as Mitch Foster, the city manager. Mitch, a question in regards to the Hamlin Township has their meeting tonight in regards to sticks and the issue that's there.
Yep.
We're talking about Michael's eventually coming into the corner of Rath and Ludington Avenue.
Yep.
Any progress before I ask you the question on that corner? Where are we at on that?
They had to redesign the basement and their foundation a little bit based on some changing conditions.
Okay.
But they're still, as of last communication, they're still planning with a May start.
Okay.
Yep.
The conversations continued to come up about, how did Hamlin Township approach the measures that they did and the approvals and such. What if there is any conversations between Hamlin Township and the city of Ludington so that there isn't any missteps in regards to the city of Ludington as and not just Michael's but businesses moving forward because they're kind of the people are being backed into corners right and left there.
Yeah, the mayor and I, Mark and I will hold, we try to meet quarterly with our neighbors in Hamlin, Amber, Scottville, PM, and the county, just to kind of keep things open. And at our first meeting about 4 months ago, this was talked about a little bit with one of their trustees. And so I think we try to keep those lines of communication open. But a little bit, it's just the reality of the location of Sticks versus the location of Michael's. Mm-hmm. Michael's is in a downtown commercial area where you already have activity into the late evenings, whereas Michael's may not necessarily be in that same location. Mm-hmm. We aren't going to have a bowling alley and outdoor beer garden. There's just not space for it. And so I think the use is just different as well. However, the Planning Commission, City Council, staff, we are well aware of the issues and concerns that have popped up with Sticks. And so just making sure that we are cooperative with the ownership group there to say, hey, we recognize here's some problems. Can we talk about this in advance so that we don't run into them long term? One of the things we actually have on the agenda tonight is a parking change for just across Rath at where Wave Nutrition and Cottage Works is having their new location. Mm-hmm. And there was a compromise that was made by the committee to have it be 2-hour parking all the time, not just during the daytime, because, while Wave Nutrition and Julie Van Dyke and the ownership over there recognize, hey, we need people in and out of here fairly quickly, they also know that Sticks or Michael's going to have people there for a couple hours at a time, and so how can we work together? And so I think that's really the goal, is how can we work together so that their impact is not negative, it's truly positive on the community.
All right, and we still have issues with parking. You know, that comes up from time to time, and it feels like, I know you say this, that there's a lot of parking available, but
Right.
it just seems like there's not. And I'm not sure if that is going to be addressed anytime soon, if it needs to be addressed. But you know, when you are, as an example, we host trivia at Timbers on Thursday nights, and it's hard to find a parking spot on Thursday nights. And what's going to happen when spring and summer? When summer comes around, and I think that's a concern. You know, will those conversations be a part of something that the city will address here?
Oh, absolutely. At least work with private property owners on that. Part of the issue is the city doesn't own a ton of parking lot space in downtown. It's just how it's happened over years. But we can work with private property owners to have some shared parking arrangements and those sorts of items that will help alleviate that problem, whether perceived or real, on any given night into the future.
And you've got what's we're Wave, the apartment complex there. What's it called? I can't remember the name now. But there's an apartment complex there.
Yep.
And the parking on the west side of that building is public parking.
Yep, that's a shared parking arrangement. Yep.
And you know, is that going to become a dispute between, because the other side of that building is still unoccupied. You know, what's that long-term conversation for that parking lot and for the residents and for the businesses that potentially move in, like Wave Nutrition?
Well, I think that one of the things is, until that parking lot is full, I'm not as worried about that. Obviously, once new businesses arrive in there, I think it'll become a conversation topic. But it's a fairly large parking lot, and the reality is that most of the residents that are in those two apartment complexes do not have vehicles or only have one vehicle, and so that's taking up significantly less space. And so we'll just, you know, keep an eye on that, maintain kind of an idea as to what's happening. But there are other items. One of the things that we're looking at as a city and kind of a DDA is looking at the parking lot there behind kind of Timbers and Barley and Ryan, those folks, to say, hey, how can we reconfigure this with all the new ownership around here so that we add more parking stalls, but also so it's a little bit more fluid of a parking lot instead of all chopped up the way it is right now. So there is work being done to kind of evaluate those options.
We got a comment on our Facebook page from Katie. She says, we pay hundreds for tickets. This is going back to our topic that we talked about just a few minutes ago in regards to the beach. She says, we pay hundreds for tickets to concerts, professional games, our entry fees to a zoo, which are pricey, 10 to 20 for parking. She says $5 to park to use a beach is so minimal. I'd love to see an upgraded playground if this can help. And those fees would go potentially for a playground.
Well, right, and that's again part of that conversation is, you know, council has all number of methods to restrict, earmark, or set aside dollars that come from very specific revenue sources. Or they could just go, you know, allow it to go back into the general fund. It can be looked at in a number of different ways.
All right, and Scott mentioned that Michael's construction could potentially start this month. Is that what you're hearing a little bit?
Yep.
Is that what we can potentially see there?
We're still hoping so, yes.
All right, and that's not a bad thing for tourists to see. Hey, we've got some buildings being put up in Ludington that they might not see until, you know, late summer or fall or even next year when they return. If you're just joining us, we're talking with Mitch Foster, City Manager of Ludington, and Mark Barnett, the Mayor of Ludington. Mark, we haven't really talked too much about what the downtown area looks like in regards to, new businesses coming in, the life of downtown in a while. Do you see that things are progressing in a positive way in the downtown area, and why do you feel that way?
Well, you know, I was, as we were talking about parking a little bit ago, I kind of have gone back and thought about the parking issue relative to the timing and that kind of thing for on-street parking and lot parking and stuff downtown. And the change has been a constant in downtown Ludington for the 20-plus years that I've been here. And we've constantly looking at the parking scheme, for example, time parking. And I know that there are particular business needs, like Julie Van Dyke and the folks there at Cottage Works, and they have a quick turnaround thing. The post office across the street, if you look on the parking map, they have a 15-minute time limit there. So the city has really tried to do, I think, a really good job of working with customer needs and business owner needs over the time to create flow and create longer-term parking to the extent that is possible. The thing that has changed relative to the lot, as Mitch should point out, is that that's parking that didn't previously exist, at least in the form that it's in now, and is available to people, whether it's business owners or whatever. So I know that you asked about the business climate in general downtown, but that's one of those things that I see as changing or morphing. And I think it's important because that really talks about what the businesses have done. And since I've been here, there's been any number of types of businesses that have come and then have gone. And the makeup of the downtown really kind of morphs and it ebbs and flows.
All right. What about, as you were talking about that, Mr. Mayor, one of the questions that keeps coming up in my mind is going, vertical, right? And going up. In regards to parking, and you'd mentioned this in a previous segment, that the cost of that per parking spot is a lot more than just on a ground level spot.
Right.
But how realistic is this going to be? You know, does Traverse City have these? Do other communities that you might have talked to? Is that something to go upwards in a parking ramp, even if it's a 2 or 3 story ramp?
Yeah, so Traverse City does have a parking ramp, and they're looking at building another parking ramp. The cost to those things, because of the amount of concrete and steel that they have in them, is astronomical. You're looking at $10 million plus. And so where do you recoup those dollars? It's either as a part of a big brownfield project, or it's frankly a part of paid parking. And that's, again, we don't have paid parking in downtown. We used to have, the little coin-operated machines, but we don't have that anymore, and so that'd be a different long-term conversation. But I think the question becomes: do we have enough critical mass downtown at any given point in time to where a parking deck would be needed? And that's one thing that council would have to take a look at, is if that exists.
Mm-hmm. When it has come up in the past, has it just been now kind of chuckled off in the sense, or has there been any sort of survey or research done?
I don't know if there's ever been anything digging into a parking deck before. The mayor might know it from his previous time, going back, but I've not had those conversations before, at least.
All right, thoughts?
Well, I kind of go back to where I came from, and that was the city of Pontiac, and they had the Phoenix Center. And if you're not familiar with the Phoenix Center, it was like 4 levels of parking deck with a park area on the top. And if you had a magic wand and you'd like to just make something appear out of nowhere, let's just say, for example, the parking lot behind Old Hamlin and south of Court Street. And if you could plop one right there, that'd be wonderful. Get it up high enough to see the lake and that kind of thing. But the reality of it is do we have the ability to afford something like that? Because again, it is not going to fall out of the sky. It's going to be paid for by the men and women, the taxpayers here in the city of Ludington. So, and so we really want to be careful. I think intentional. And do we have a parking deck that's necessary for 3 months of the year and sits vacant and the wind howling through it 8 or 9 months of the year? Mm-hmm. So I think that's a judgment that council would need to look at if they chose to continue in that vein, or to look at that.
All right, let's take one of our last topics this morning, water and sewer rates, and then we've got some stop signs that are coming down too. Mm-hmm. Let's chat about that. Mitch, let's dive into the water and sewer rates for the residents going up, right?
Yep. So the city had a water and sewer rate study done, which took a look at all of our expenses, our current revenues, and determined that based on kind of future forecasting, we need about 4.5% more over the next 3 years on sewer rates, and then 7.9% more over the next 3 years on water rates. In general, that's about $3 every 4 months or every 3 months more on water and sewer. So it's not a huge dollar increase. The percentage just looks big. But the city of Ludington's water and sewer rates have been fairly low, comparable. to other communities, especially given the fact that we bill quarterly and not monthly. What we bill quarterly is fairly common to see what people actually receive as their monthly bill. So definitely looking to see how we can raise a little bit more revenue to pay for massive projects that are in the pipeline now or have been finished up recently.
All right, and we talk about the progression when it comes to replacement of those underground pipes,
Exactly.
And lines that continues. Mr. Mayor, we've got some adjustments, and whenever this happens, people have to get used to not having stop signs in particular areas. Monona at Seminole and North Sherman at Woodlawn, those stop signs are coming out. Do we know the reasons why?
Well, I think that the ability to use a stop sign to slow traffic is not one that the Department of Transportation endorses, and I think there's a perception there, or perhaps a reality there, that's what those are there for. In other words, driving north or south of Monona, if you have to stop, that means you have to anticipate stops. So the slower Bryant to Tinkham traffic and slower speeds. Same thing with Sherman. The other factor is to consider coming north on Sherman from Tinkham. There's a bit of a rise and kind of a weave to get up to that intersection. And so in the wintertime with ice and snow and that kind of thing, creates a little bit of a problem proceeding through after a full stop. So I think that's probably one of the things that has people concerned.
And Mitch, when we remove stop signs, is there pushback about safety, slower speeds, so on and so forth? What's those conversations like in regards to these two areas?
It's not often that you remove stop signs because they're put in place at a specific time for a very specific reason. The city's removed 3 or 4 other stop signs around former Lakeview School and former Foster Elementary. Based on those changes in traffic patterns. These 2 locations that we're talking about now were deemed by Chief Jones as something that didn't meet, as the mayor talked about, the manual for uniform traffic control devices. And so it's just a reality. If all of a sudden we get 4 months down the line, traffic control orders are not very difficult to have put in place, and so maybe there's a need for a yield sign or some sort of other traffic control device. But as the mayor said, the MUTCD, as it's referred to, or the traffic engineer's Bible, is pretty explicit that you can't use or you shouldn't use stop signs to control speed. And it opens up a community for liability if that's the case. And so I think Chief Jones just did some reviewing as he was driving around, questioned those ones and dug into it a little bit and made this recommendation. All
right, sounds good. Anything else that we missed? We'll start with you, Mitch, about tonight that we should remind the listeners and viewers.
The one thing I would say, we talked about the audit right off the bat, and the audit is quite boring for non-governmental finance nerds. It really is. It's a big document. It takes a while to get through it, but it really tells the story of where the city's at financially. And so if you get a chance, once the audit presentation is done, it will be up on the city's website. Take a look at it. If you have questions, you can call myself, a city council member up, Clerk Luskin, and we can try to walk you through it and help you understand kind of the city's finances from a big picture standpoint.
All right, sounds good. Mr. Mayor, what's your thoughts as we close down today?
Well, just kind of echoing on what Mitch was just talking about the audit. It's not a shiny, fast-moving kind of a thing. It really is a serious look at the city's business and how we've been operating. And Ken Berthume and his company have done for years and years, have done a great job in not only conducting the audit and working with the city and providing all the assurances that things are going well, but also he is pretty succinct relative to the amount of total information. He's pretty succinct in the presentation of the report. So I appreciate his efforts and what he's done over the years.
All right, sounds good. If you have any comments or questions for these two individuals or for the future, you can reach out to us, comment on our Facebook page under the live video that's right there. That will soon be archived. So if you've missed any of this segment, you can watch it in its entirety there, as well as our YouTube channel. Make sure you check that out when you get a chance and do subscribe. Mitch Foster and Mr. Mayor Barnett, thank you so much for coming in today, and we appreciate you always being here. The city council meeting 6 p.m. tonight, and don't forget that your voice can be heard. Public comment starting, and as well wrapping up the meeting. And as always, just engage, because Mr. Mayor, that's what as a person of the community we should be doing, right?
Absolutely. It's important to know what people are thinking, not only from the government side, but from the residents and taxpayers that live here. That's important.
Sounds good. Thank you so much for coming in. It is 9 o'clock here on 102.7 Mom FM. Let's kick off the 9 o'clock hour on your station playing your hit music. It is Mom FM.
Thanks for